Hi, I'm Jamie Meyer, founder of Resilience for Life. I'm a board certified health and wellness coach, heart math provider, and a yoga therapist. And today I'm speaking with my dear friend, Susan Douglas. So I want to tell you a little bit about Susan first, and I'm going to read an introduction because she is so very accomplished. Susan Douglas thrives in the overload zone. She's a partner in the law firm Fross Zelnick Lehrman and Zissu in New York City, where she specializes in trademark and copyright law. But Susan's interests extend to other areas. She is a 500-hour RIT certified yoga teacher, and she teaches 3 times a week. She chairs the Downtown Revitalization Committee in her village where she lives. She volunteers for projects and committees in her community. She loves exotic travel, skiing, hiking, and reading. But her passion, something that she has done since January 2000, is to volunteer in the pet therapy program with her Australian Shepherd dogs. Her current dogs are Simon, who will be 11 later this month, Benny, who is 5, and Sadie, who is 3. And if we're lucky, we might get to see one of them during this interview. Susan, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you, Jamie. It's a pleasure.
Tell me about your work and with the volunteering and any aspect of it that you'd like to share.
Well, first of all, I heard about the pet therapy program by reading about it in the local paper. Dogs go and visit sick patients at the hospital, and just by being there, just cuddling with people, smiling at them, letting people pet them, it just makes a major difference in their well-being. And I, at that time, had an Australian Shepherd dog named Clyde. And he was amazing. He was one of those dogs who met everyone, loved everyone, put his face in their lap, and just was the cuddliest, friendliest. And I thought, Clyde would be ideal for this. But how can I do this? I'm working full time. They didn't have the program on the weekends, and I just couldn't figure it out. So, well, I came to it in a kind of sad way, but my sister was sick. She had cancer, and I just had that aha moment that if you want to do something, and who knows how much time we have or what life will bring, and if there's something you want to do, then figure out a way to do it. So I had already been at my law firm for 18 years by then and was a partner with a substantial book of business. So I said to them, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to be studying yoga in the morning with our beloved Tao, our Tao Porchon Lynch.
You shared that, yes.
Yes, who now is 101 years old. I thought she was ancient when I started with her in 1999, but here we go. She's still going strong.
Yeah.
And I said, and in the afternoon, I'm going to volunteer at the hospital for a couple of hours with my dogs, cheering up sick people. I said, just think of it as a 2 hour martini lunch without the martinis. And they said, fine. I said, I'll just work in between, I'll fit it in. And so they gave me the green light. And Clyde was already 9 then. And I got him into a pro. Everything was just meant to be. It just fell into place. I looked online. There was a course in the next town over where they did pet therapy certification. It's an organization called Therapy Dogs International, TDI.
Okay.
And they're online. You can just find them online. And they do certification for hospital visits.
How
Um,
long does that take when you go through the training?
Well, it was a course of, I think it was 6 weeks, and on the seventh week, they give the test.
Mm-hmm.
And they had already had one session when I found them, and I went to the next class and met the instructor. And Clyde promptly ran up to her and put his face in her lap and licked her, and she said, "Okay, he's in." And he took the class and passed with flying colors. And I'll just tell you one story about Clyde. So it was
Okay.
amazing. We went to Westchester Medical Center, which is the trauma unit, the trauma hospital, high degree, high trauma hospital in Westchester County, which is the main trauma hospital between New York City and Albany. So people are helicoptered in from Pennsylvania and New Jersey
Mm.
and all over with highly critical problems. And one of the nurses suggested that I visit a young woman. She was from Ecuador. She was 22 and she had had an aneurysm and had been in a coma. And her mother was sitting there with her every day, and her mother only spoke Spanish, and I only have high school French. But I would go in and put Clyde on the bed with the daughter, and Clyde is one of those snouter type dogs. If you don't pet him, he gets his nose under you, and if you have a cup of coffee in your hand, it goes flying. He's that kind of dog. So I put him up on the bed with the girl, and he could not understand why she would not pet him. And he just kept snouting and snouting her hand. And one day, while I was sitting there trying to chat up the mom, which was pretty difficult, all of a sudden the girl reached out and started petting Clyde's head. And that was the beginning. And the mother ran out of the room crying. And
I'm gonna start crying. Oh my
they
God.
asked us to come back as often as we could. And I only had Mondays and Thursdays, but I went every Monday and Thursday to visit her. And each time she showed more and more progress. And eventually she came out enough so she could go to the rehab place where we went across the street at the rehab center that was affiliated with the hospital. And I ran into her once. And she came up to me where she was learning to walk and dress and eat and get all of her skills back again. And she came up to me and she said, "Thank you for bringing Clyde. I always knew when he was there." And I thought, gosh, if that only happens to you once in your life, it's enough. But things like this happen with the dogs all the time. Oh, and by the way, that year, Clyde was nominated as the UN Volunteer of the Year by the hospital, but the award went to a two-legged person. But
Wow.
Clyde didn't care, and
Wow.
he
So
yeah, he worked
there
so
was a mixed awarding of humans with animals at the same time, and Clyde was one of the nominees.
no, I think they just nominated him because that the hospital put him in
Oh,
because
because he was wonderful.
he was so remarkable. And so
Wow.
it's kind of, I have to tell you that doing pet therapy is kind of addictive. I mean, I could tell you wonderful stories with all of my dogs. I take them to patients who say, I knock on the door or look in and say, "Hi, would you like a visit with the dog?" And sometimes the patient will say, "No, I'm just in too much pain. I can't do it." Well, but let me just see the dog. And then before you know it, the dog's on the bed and the patient's playing with the dog. And then he'll turn to me and say, "This has been so wonderful. I have forgotten to take my morphine." And, when they're on like a self drip or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
it's just different things happen. Benny, my dog Benny, and I were walking down the hallway at White Plains Hospital, where we now volunteer. And a nurse came running out in the hallway because she heard us. And she said, "Quick, come in." And I ran into the room, and there was this sort of large guy wearing just shorts, and he had electrodes all over. He was in some sort of high blood pressure spike, and he was surrounded by nurses and medical technicians, and his wife was gripping his hand, and he was in obvious distress. And the nurse said, "Quick, get the dog on the bed." And sorry. And I said, well, I started to get my sheet out because we put a clean sheet down on the bed before we put the dogs up, although they've had a shower the night before. And I started to get the sheet ready for Benny. And she said, "No, just get the dog on the bed." And I threw Benny on the bed. And the man is this big, bulky guy. He just grabbed Benny and was just giving him this big bear hug. And I thought, oh my gosh, the dog is going to kill the man. He's sitting on his chest and he's having some sort of heart issue. But no, and everything calmed. The monitors went quiet. The beeping stopped. Everybody just sort of breathed a sigh. And then after some moments, the nurse said, "Okay, thanks." And I got the dog off the bed and we just went on to the next patient.
That is so thrilling. I can't imagine anybody listening to this who loves animals wouldn't be interested in knowing how they might be able to do this. Can anybody do it? Is any dog eligible? Like, what are the
Any dog.
qualities that
No,
any,
they will take any kind of dog. It can be, originally they had situations where they wouldn't allow certain breeds of dogs, the usual suspects, pit bulls and Rottweilers and chows, Doberman pinschers. But now my understanding is that TDI accepts any breed of dog. The dog just has to be friendly, have a terrific disposition, be up to date on all shots and medications, and pass the test with a TDI certified trainer. And there are other organizations. I know there's the Delta Dog and the Good Dog Foundation, I think, or something like that. I'm not positive. We went to TDI. The advantage for me of TDI is you take the test once and you're done. Sort of like taking a driver's license. I mean, once
you don't have to recertify.
Right. Some of the other organizations require annual or periodic recertification, and you know, the dog only gets better with practice. I've never heard of a situation where that didn't happen. So there are lists of instructors in many different states throughout the country, and or other organizations you could find. And then the hospitals, more and more hospitals and cancer care units, and also nursing homes. Generally, you don't need to have a certified dog to go to a nursing home. Just any well-behaved dog who's up to date on shots can go to a nursing home. And there's a need in hospitals and nursing homes, in assisted living homes, in children's rehab centers, anywhere. Right? Libraries. They have dog reading programs where certified therapy dogs go to a school or hospital, and maybe kids with learning disabilities or reading, you know, nervousness when reading, can get into the library program, and the kids will just sit down and read stories to the dogs, and the dogs just sit there and look interested, and it really helps with reading. And kids who, you know, are stammering or are unsure feel comfortable because the dogs are non-judgmental.
Of course, yeah. That's why we all love our animals, right? That unconditional love, it's healing. It is so wonderful. And of course, volunteering, which is why I'm so grateful to you for doing it this month. We know, as you've already said, for all of us, it has so many health benefits.
Absolutely. And it's addictive, really. I mean, just the positive endorphins and happy feeling that come from watching someone's face light up, or having a visitor at the hospital say, this is the first time we've seen Mom smile since we brought her here. And we hear that again and again and again. It's just, everyone is brightened. Even people who don't like dogs will say, well, let me just see the dog. And they say, why is the dog here? I said, it's to make you smile. And the grouchy patient invariably smiles. You can't help yourself, even if you're not a dog lover. Right. It just makes everyone smile.
Are there other types of animals that do volunteer work with their owners?
Well, in a hospital, it's pretty much dogs, because cats can spread certain kinds of diseases, so they don't let the cats in the program. But they had a cat at the rehab center where we volunteered. So cats can be at rehab centers. I've heard of small horses, llamas, you know, things like that, small hooved animals, especially in more rural places. I mean, I think in New York City, they have small horses or ponies in the program. It's mostly dogs, but and the TDI program is for dogs. But I'm sure with some research there could be other animals, but they just bring such joy. And for me, tremendous health benefits too. I think one of the health benefits is because I've been volunteering at the hospital for nearly 20 years. I like to think I have a tremendous immune system. Besides, you know, just being around people who maybe not are 100% well, you pick up immunities to things that might be around. And between the constant hand washing, which goes on in hospitals, and you have yourself trained to constantly wash your hands, and just being around people who aren't well, I think it's a benefit to your immune system physically as well as psychologically.
Yeah. Well, no doubt the love that you share and exude talking about this is so exciting. It's got to be a boost to all of the cells. Do you have a dog there? I saw you look. Can we see?
Oh yeah, I have two dogs here. Ben, come here, Ben. Come here, Benny. Here's Benny. Hop up, Ben. Hop up. Okay, here's, I don't know if you can see him. Here's Ben.
Oh my gosh.
This is Benny.
Hi, Benny.
And here's Benny's hospital tag. You can see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, this is Benny.
Benny Douglas.
Benny Douglas, pet therapy volunteer. And here's Sadie. Wow, this is my
Oh,
girl, Sadie.
hi,
This
Sadie.
is Jamie.
Sadie. Hi,
Sadie,
Sadie.
look. She has her face plastered to mine. She's just a little kissy girl.
Aw, so sweet.
Okay, all right, that's all. Okay. There's her two. There's one more Simon, but I think he's downstairs guarding the perimeter. I
Okay.
don't.
You said they have do you usually take one at a time? You never go with two dogs, right?
Well, at Westchester Medical Center, I used to take two dogs at a time, and it was great because, you know, although the dogs love to go and they're always saying, pick me. And I have to write on the calendar whose turn it is so they don't have squabbling in the house. Um, but they love to do it, but it is exhausting for them too because they're taking on all of the anxiety and the pain and then the sort of issues that patients are going through. The dogs absorb that, believe it
Oh,
or not.
interesting. What do you notice after a dog has been with a difficult, situation?
Well, the dogs get home and are exhausted and they'll sleep for hours. They're tired from just putting on that happy face and being so empathetic and friendly and having everyone touch them and maybe pull their ears or not pet them correctly, and they're very patient and kind. And I think just feeling the kind of anxiety that you will see in a patient
Sure.
makes the dogs feel a little tired, and by the end they're just like, okay, we're done. um, Sometimes even when we're walking out and people will see us as we're leaving the hospital, oh, can we pet the dog? And I always say yes, and the dogs sometimes say, oh, I'm not so sure. But so when I took two of them,
Uh-huh.
they could, well, one could visit on the bed, and then when I could see a little fatigue setting in, I'd have that one hop off and have the other one hop on. So they were really working the same 2.5 hours. I think TDI recommends 1 hour, but we've always gone 2 hours.
Okay.
But and then sometimes we stay extra because someone will see us and say, please just go see my mom or my sister or whatever it is, and we always say yes.
Mm-hmm.
But with two dogs it's a little easier because they're not as tired. And
Mm-hmm.
then for a little while I took three dogs. Mistake. It was like a three-ring circus. Just dogs all running all over the place, hopping up and down.
Uh-huh.
And so it was too much to take three. And
Mm-hmm.
then at White Plains Hospital, they asked that we just bring one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually good because then, you can work 2 or 3 times a week with your dogs and not have any one of them be too exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
So that works. I think
Wonderful.
if you only had one dog and you wanted to volunteer 3 or 4 times a week, that might be a bit much for the dog,
Mm-hmm.
unless it was a short visit.
Right. And you mentioned that they get a bath. Is that a big production every time they go that they get a bath? We've seen the cartoons of the dog getting the bath and the shaking and.
Well, we have a shower.
Oh,
So in the basement, we have one of those nozzle things that you can unclip from the top and you can bring the nozzle down. So I give the dogs a shower, each of the dogs a shower before his or her turn.
mhm.
And we use Nova Pearl shampoo and conditioner. So we put on the shampoo and then we rinse, and then the cream rinse,
Oh my.
and rinse. And then I train the dogs to shake once or twice in the shower, and then as soon as the dog gets out, and then starts shaking all over the bathroom. And it's just a big mop up job. But we have 3 towels, dry the dog, and I do this just before I go to bed. And when we wake up in the morning, the dog is fluffy and dry, so no hair dryers. And then everybody gets brushed out in the morning, and they look beautiful. And everyone remarks what beautiful coats and how glossy and fresh they are, and they smell nice. And it's
They are beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I mean, the last thing you want if you're feeling sick is to have some mangy, flea-bitten animal in bed with you. It would be
Of
horrible.
course. Of course. I've known you now for, gosh, almost 20 years, I guess. And we've talked briefly about this, but I'm so moved by hearing you talk more in depth about what you do. And I have so much respect and admiration for this kind of work. It makes me, I love dogs. As you know, I have Maggie now, the cat. But when I next have a dog, this is definitely something I would love to do.
And it's a, oops, Benny says fine. He says, good idea. It's just an issue of temperament. And I could just give you one bit of advice that I've
Sure.
learned from my 6 or 7 dogs who have been therapy dogs, which is when you get the dog, if you get a dog from a shelter or a rescue, they can work just as well as a new puppy.
Uh-huh.
Either is possible. Our Sadie was a rescue. We got her when she was 2.5.
Oh,
But,
great.
but the main thing is to look for temperament when you're selecting a dog that's not hand shy. If the dog cowers when you reach to pet the dog or the puppy, if you bring your hand up over the dog's head, which isn't the right way to do it, but you can't count on people at the hospital doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
If you reach for a dog and the dog cowers and shies, that wouldn't be a good candidate for pet therapy unless you work with the dog a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Also, socialization, and especially with a puppy or an adopted dog. Um, we take our dogs and we get them into town. Anybody who wants to pet the dog, to hold a puppy, great. As many different people touching the dog as possible. When I got my dogs as puppies, I took them to the nursery school, to the little Mazel Tots nursery school, and they brought down the 2s, then the 3s, then the 4-year-olds, and we passed the puppy in a circle around to all the kids. And then the puppy was acclimated to young children. One of my
Oh,
dogs, I didn't do that, and she growled at small children a little bit, when
uh-huh.
she was younger until she got used to it. So, as many situations, people with canes, bicycles, skateboards, men with beards, you can sometimes, set a dog off. Every sort of situation that you can think of,
Mm-hmm.
um, to expose the dog so that he or she is accepting of all kinds of people, because that's what you'll find when you do this kind of volunteer work.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wow. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, well, I hope I've inspired some of your Resilience for Life followers to think about enlisting their dogs in this program.
Thank you, Susan. I have so much regard for you on so many levels, and it's been a real treat to get to share Tao and to go to India and
Yeah.
just add this chapter to our knowledge and friendship. So
Well, thank you. And I admire you so much with all of your different interests and certifications and talents, warmth and beauty inside and out. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
thank you, Susan. Have a
Okay.
happy Thanksgiving. Wishing you and yours the best.
Thank you so much to be thankful for. Back to you.
Bye bye.
Bye.